Hello, fellow optimists. My name is Michael. I'm a community member of the Optimism Collective, and I am excited to be here today to talk about Retro Funding 4, Optimism's most recent iteration of the beautiful retro funding experiment. 10 million OP was awarded to over 200 projects this round, which experimented with metrics-based voting. So metrics-based voting was a huge step forward, not only in the objectivity of the results, but also the scalability of the process. Instead of badge holders needing to vote on over 500 individual projects, they voted just on 16 metrics. And then those metrics were used to distribute the OP in an objective way. So we are excited to have 3 recipients from Retro Funding 4 here with us today. Gitcoin Passport, ERC 4337, and Coop Records. So let's start off with Coop Records. Coop Records is one of the most influential groups in Web3 music. They are one of the largest contributors to Sound XYZ's overall volume. So Sound decided to distribute all of their rewards to their contributors and pass them through. Coop Records has empowered over 92 artists to have over 130 ETH in primary music sales just in its first year. So we're lucky to have Cooper, the founder of Coop Records, here with us today. Cooper, do you want to do maybe a little intro?
Sure. What's up, guys? My name's Cooper. As he mentioned, I'm the founder of Coop Records, and we are an on-chain record label. And so our job is basically helping artists who have never used crypto before have a good experience by releasing their music on-chain. The primary platform that we've been doing that through is Sound XYZ. And the way that works is we sell open editions for about $2 to collectors. In exchange, they get a download of a song and they get a seat in the audience. And for the artists that we're working with, they're very excited about it because they don't have to be super into crypto to be able to take advantage of the space and earn their first ETH.
Amazing. So can you explain why you applied? Oh, I guess this is a little bit different, but how do you feel about Sound XYZ's decision to pass their retro funding on to their contributors? And then what are your plans for using the grant that Coop Records ends up getting?
I mean, I'm definitely very thankful for Sound deciding to pass it on to its users. I feel like one of the interesting parts of this round, and you mentioned this earlier, is the system was definitely a lot more optimized in the sense that it did just look at smart contract volume. But I think for a lot of creators that were, looking to apply for Retro PGF, they're kind of at the whim of the recipients of these grants this round to see whether or not they're actually going to get rewards. So you saw platforms like Sound XYZ get a grant, Zora get a grant, Layer 3, Boost, etc. And thankfully, all of these platforms are very aligned in empowering their creators. But I think it was a very interesting small nuance of this round that the platform was the one who decided to pass it along to their users. And so I want to personally give a big shout out to Sound because they didn't have to pass that down to anyone. They just chose to do that because they saw it being the best thing that they could do with the OP and the retro funding. To answer your question directly about how we're planning on using it, we were recipients of Retro PGF 3, and what we did with that OP is actually use the tokens as incentives to get mints on the music. And so for the artists that we work with, typically speaking, they don't have a large network in crypto. I'll be very forward in saying that people aren't really super excited about the idea of collecting music on a day-to-day basis. And so we've been partnering with platforms like Boost and Layer 3 and basically offering incentives to collect the music. So what this looks like is a song costs $2 to collect. We'll give you back $1 in OP tokens. So now you have sort of an added incentive or reward to be able to do that. And those boosts have contributed to a very large percentage of our volume. And that's exactly what we plan to do for moving forward with any OP we get from the Sound distribution, is putting that back into future mints and future volume for artists that are new to the space and coming onto the record label.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. It's like seeing the retro funding positive feedback loop in action. You guys get retro funding, it boosts activity on the chain. More artists, more collectors come in. It's better for everybody. So thank you so much, Coop, for that. Moving on, we also have Gitcoin Passport. We have Kyle from Gitcoin here today. Gitcoin Passport is an essential tool for identity and reputation on chain. And fun fact, it was actually used in the metrics, in one of the trusted user metrics of this round of retro funding. So Kyle, what made you want to apply to retro funding and how was that process? And if you could do a quick intro on Gitcoin Passport as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Michael, for hosting, and the rest of the crew here as well. So Gitcoin Passport, I think, like you mentioned, is identity reputation solution, sort of a meta aggregator of mechanisms in which you can prove you're a unique human behind the wallet in a non-doxing way. So we don't store any personally identifiable information. We just kind of help you prove that there's a real human behind the wallet, but it doesn't really matter, who that human is per se. So in our particular case, we applied for retroactive funding, I think largely just to help fund development, and then also similar to Sound, to try and return back some of that OP to our users as well. So the primary way of us making impact in the OP ecosystem is through on-chain attestations using the Ethereum attestation service as one mechanism. So you go through and you sort of publish your unique humanity score via attestations on the OP network. And those can be used by a lot of other smart contracts in sort of smart contract to smart contract interactions that are looking for unique humanity signals. And so in Optimism's case, I think there's about 65,000 unique users that went through and published unique humanities. Not all of those have a passing score of above 20, like we would normally reward. But a lot of the intention is to continue to reward generating those attestations and sort of proving unique humanity on wallets that people own without doxing themselves. So we don't have anything that I can announce quite yet on the way that those funds are going to be distributed, but it's a thing that we're working on with our team to continue to incentivize unique users to publish those attestations on chain.
Awesome. And so Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, are you actually a badge holder as well?
I am a badge holder, yes.
So
yeah.
I'm curious how your experience was applying as a project, how the process was from start to finish, but also how your experience as a badge holder was this round, voting with the metrics-based voting.
Yeah, great question. So the badge holder piece is sort of like your first entry into what's coming, your first sort of opportunity to review that. And the application experience sort of showcased what was needed to apply, I guess. And it was really helpful having the badge holder experience to then understand why I needed to validate smart contracts that we owned, why it was so important that we clearly defined whether or not repos were open source and the licenses were correct and things like that. It's just because of the voting metrics that were available. I think the badge holder piece, one of the things I love about being a badge holder is we have very different ideals across all the badge holders. Optimism as a whole, I think, has done a pretty good job of grabbing, differing opinions, and the ability to sort of very respectfully debate someone else who has a different set of principles as to what should be rewarded in the Optimism ecosystem was really, really healthy. I think some of the way that we went to vote afterwards felt like it eroded some of like the discussion and sort of progress we had made, as the team, I think, just vetoed all of what badge holder had done through the working groups. But I think it was still great to be able to share opinions and to kind of just understand why people felt the way that they did ahead of applying. And then through the application process, like I said, I think it just reinforced like why we needed to do this, why these things were important to be included, is because it was much less about who knows you and who understands what your project is doing, and much more about like the on-chain activity and sort of the provable impact that you have in the ecosystem as a whole.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an amazing answer. And it's really cool that you had the experience, from both sides of the coin. So last, but definitely not least, we have Tom here, product manager for ERC 4337 at the Ethereum Foundation, to talk about account abstraction, which was another big recipient of Retro Funding 4 and an essential tool to bringing the next billion users on chain. Tom, do you want to do like a quick background on account abstraction, and maybe talk about the application process or your plans for the grant?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this great live stream. So a little bit about, so I'm stepping in for Yoav. He currently couldn't make it, but I'm also on the team. And I just wanted to say that for account abstraction in general, for those unfamiliar, the whole idea behind ERC 4337 is introducing the concept of account abstraction on a protocol level without requiring any consensus layer changes. So we don't need any hard forks. Each chain can just decide to adopt it by deploying the entry point contract and making sure there are bundlers running which support this new type of mempool that where user operations get sent, which eventually turn into regular old transactions that we all know and love that are on, on the regular on chain. But this allows the adoption of account abstraction in a way which is there's much less friction. The concept of account abstraction is basically that we want to make sure that currently the situation is that with regular EOAs, it's a very unforgiving flow for the user, where they have just this one key, and if they lose it, everything's gone, and if someone steals it, everything is gone, and there's no recovery, and there's no different means of authentication, and a lot of things that we're used to from Web 2, which aren't that terrible, and we kind of need if we want to have mainstream adoption. So by abstracting how the authentication and authorization work, how nonces work, how gas works, which also allows us for something called a paymaster, which is being heavily used among all the chains that have adopted account abstraction. And also the execution itself, which allows batching transaction, which is also a very popular use case for account abstraction. So by having all of those things, we are trying to enable, like you said, the next 1 billion users to go on chain. Speaking a little bit about the retroactive public good funding. So we also were recipients of the previous round. And the way we see it is this project being what you will call like a classical public good, right? We don't have a token. We don't have a profit model. It's a public infrastructure for everybody. It's all open source to use by everyone. It's really at the protocol layer. So we see a lot of value that it provides to Optimism and what you would call like the Optimism superchain, right? All the other chains building on top of Optimism. And so we do feel that it brings a lot of value to those chains. And if to quote a couple of numbers, on all the various Optimism chains, we have around 400,000 accounts that were deployed, millions of user operation. We're the top gas spender if you're looking like at transactions that have passed through the entry point. I feel like that's exactly the type of project that retro funding was meant to fund in a way. I would also say that like our plans in terms of using the grant, like how we want to develop the project. So I want to focus less on the fact of what we will do with the funds, because we've already been doing that with the Ethereum Foundation. But what I feel is very great here is that currently this project was 100% funded by the EF. But it's great to see that the Optimism community also recognizes, the value of this and as a public good, so they can also participate in the funding effort as well. Funding goes to, just basically paying for the team, paying for conferences, stuff like that, just, whatever we can do to keep on building this. But I feel like it's even in a sense like doubly important for Optimism, because a lot of chains, Optimism and chains building on it like Base, give a high priority to user experience and about getting mainstream, and that goes hand in hand with account abstraction. Yeah.
Amazing, Tom. Yeah, amazing answer. I think one of the really beautiful things about your 3 projects specifically is they really are grow the pie type projects, like identity on chain, bringing artists on chain, and of course the user experience that's possible through account abstraction. So really glad to see all of you, get a piece of this funding round. And thank you so much for being here. Believe it or not, Optimism still has over 700 million OP from the initial token allocation that is earmarked for future retro funding rounds. And that is on top of the continuous contributions from superchain chains like Base, Mode, Zora, and of course, OP Mainnet. So that means a lot more experiments in the future. And that's why I would like to introduce Jonas. So Jonas is not just a beautiful person, but the shepherd, I would call him, of this beautiful retro funding experiment. And one of the main forces behind the continuous iteration and improvement from round to round. So Jonas, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Coming on strong there in the beginning, but thank you for the nice intro.
Of course, you deserve it.
Cool. Should I take it away and talk about the next round that we're doing?
Yeah. So obviously, this is an iterative experimental project. This was one major experiment in round 4, and I think there might be some future experiments happening in the next few rounds. So I don't know. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about round 5, maybe a sneak peek on some of the experiments we might see there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go full sneak peek and share my screen and show you beautiful forum posts.
All right.
Okay, one second. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Beautiful. All right. Yeah, as Michael has said, every round we run an experiment with a specific hypothesis. We learn from executing on that round. We get a ton of feedback from builders within the Optimism community, from the Optimism citizens and more. And we use all of that to kind of come up with the next experiment to continuously improve and iterate on the system. We are in the system now where there are multiple types of rounds. So we just completed the on-chain builder round, which was all about building on-chain across different OP chains. And the next round we have coming up is the OP Stack round. So I'll just give you a brief kind of preview of what this round will focus on. First off, we have 8 million OP going to OP Stack contributors. And this is starting within less than a month. The sign up will open. We get towards voting in sometime September, and then early October, you will see the results of this. As in previous rounds, there's always like this scope that we outline and eligibility criteria. I kind of briefly go over the rounds of contributions that are rewarded. The first one is Ethereum core contributions. So this is all the Ethereum infrastructure which supports or is a dependency of the OP Stack, one of the big recipients of retro funding overall. So everything from smart contract languages, Ethereum clients, work on the EVM, testnets, cryptography research, etc. We have OP Stack research and development, all the teams, all the core dev teams that work on the OP Stack. And so everything is in here where we are doing research that's relevant to iterating on the OP Stack, or we're introducing new features or tweaks into it. So these are things like protocol upgrades, different client implementations, modules and mods, audits, and more. And then lastly, we have OP Stack tooling. So that is all the tooling that you might use to spin up your own OP chain. So everything from deployment, operation, testing of the OP Stack, integration tooling, load testing, and much more is within that. These are the 3 categories of things that we'll be able to apply to the OP Stack round. And lastly, the experiment that we're running here, which will be interesting, is sorting batch holders into smaller groups that will look at projects within these 3 categories. And then we're selecting a number of guest voters based on their expertise relating to the OP Stack. And so the experiment that we're testing here, you can check out this beautiful forum post, is if experts, people with knowledge, expertise relating to the OP Stack, vote or perform different in their voting compared to non-experts. So we're kind of running an intervention and control group type experiment here. Okay, that was a brief intro to the next round of retro funding.
Amazing.
Any questions?
If people are interested in diving deeper, are these forum posts the best place to get all of that information?
Yes, we'll be linking to this in the next Twitter post. This will be linked to, and this is the main point for you to find information about the round. And then you will hear from us once the signup is open. To be notified when signup starts, go to retrofunding.optimism.io, log in with your Forecaster account, and you will hear from us when the round starts.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those details, Jonas. It looks like this is going to be kind of a completely different experiment than the most recent one, testing a different category and different voting within that category.
Yes, it's very much 4 different experiments throughout the year. And so it will be, I think what's super exciting here is finally getting to control and intervention groups, because that's the true scientific way we can experiment with things and gain more insights around how different designs impact the rewarding of impact.
Cool. I have a quick question. I'm curious. Is there going to be like a random sampling to assign to different categories for the voters, the badge holders? Or is that going to be based on, interest or expertise or something like that, apart from the guest voters?
Assigning badge holders to categories will be at random.
Interesting. So this seems like it would also potentially help with scalability in the future when there are too many projects for badge holders to look at every single one.
Hopefully. There are lots of details to uncover, but this was also one of the popular, this kind of design scheme was one of the popular suggestions in previous rounds made by badge holders.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Do any of the other builders have any questions or any last thoughts that they want to throw out there? If not, thank you guys so much for coming. Tom, Coop, Kyle, and Jonas, you guys are all doing an amazing job building towards an on-chain future. So really appreciate you being here and all the work that you're doing in general for Optimism, but for the crypto community as a whole. So really big thanks for you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Alright.
for having us, Michael.
That's it, everyone. Stay tuned for more info on round 5 coming up. As always, it is amazing to be here. Nice to host. Stay optimistic, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.